Thank you, Dr. Rusty Holmes, for joining me today as my next guest on my independent study interview quest. My first question for you is, what does mental health mean to you, and how do you apply it to your career?
Yeah, well, thanks for interviewing me. This will be fun. Uh, so mental health is really interesting to me because I think a lot of the time we can compare it to our physical health. If you ever think about like what a healthy person looks like, that's somebody who goes to the doctor whenever they're sick, or I don't know, they're into like preventative care. Uh, and if you imagine someone who is physically fit, you imagine somebody completely different. Like you might imagine somebody who can like run really fast or who's like completely ripped, whatever. And I think the same goes for your mental space as well. You can have mental health or mental fitness, and I'm sure that we'll get into this at some point. We don't necessarily have to crack this open right out of the gate, but I really advocate for mental fitness for musicians. I think it's just not good enough for us to be healthy in our mental space, but it's important for us to kind of be doing daily exercises to build our mental fitness. But that plays a huge role in my own career because being a musician's tough. Being a musician is really tough. And I just to give people context, I am uh, what a half of a year out of my doctorate degree. So I finished my doctorate right when the shutdown was happening in May 2020, and now I just kind of have the rest of my career ahead of me. And people who are in that space know it's tough, especially right now when you don't know what kind of jobs we're going to have, or if what the career is going to look like after this. It can be really challenging, and so I really subscribe to the whole mental fitness thing. I'm constantly doing exercises to kind of prep my brain to be able to deal with all the failure that you have to go through as a musician and the uncertainty that's coming up. So yeah.
Absolutely. Can you go dive into a little bit of like what exercises you go about every day or every week? And tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So I really advocate for having a morning routine. Um, I mean, I have a whole spiel about it, so I'll save you all the nuts and bolts. But for me, what that looks like is I always make sure that I'm getting out of bed on one alarm. I think that's the biggest key. People, their alarm clock goes off and then they just lay in bed and they decide if they want to get up or not, and that sets your day up by saying that you don't respect your intentions and that you're okay just kind of like doing whatever rather than doing the things that you say that you're going to do. So I think that getting up on one alarm is uh just a profound thing. Like, get your butt out of bed, it's really important. So that's kind of like my first thing, and I kind of celebrate that too. Like, I did it. My alarm went off and my feet hit the floor and I'm like ready to go to start my day. Whenever it's the summer months, I can't do it right now. And I'm in Austin, Texas. It's not even that cold outside, but I just straight up can't do it right now. In the summer months, I always take a cold shower in the morning.
Mhm.
Right now, I just can't do it. It sounds awful. But that's another thing where you set that intention and it's just embracing the suck. I always move my body, whether that's getting in like an hour-long workout or just taking a walk around the neighborhood. It's important just to get your blood flowing, continue to wake up, and get your nervous system going. And then I journal every day, probably multiple times a day, most of the time. Uh, and I have a whole routine that I kind of go through with journaling. It's not necessarily to talk about my feelings and to talk about what's going on in my life. Um, Although it definitely can be. I've documented, really funny stuff. I remember the first time that I started journaling was like 10 years ago. I was a little baby. I was a little baby Rusty. I was 18 years old. It was the week before school started in my freshman year at Oklahoma State, and it was marching band camp going on that week. And I remember journaling like how obnoxious I was during that camp. And it's just funny to look back because some things don't change. But uh, it's cool to just kind of tell stories in that way. But I use it as like homework on myself. I wake up every day, I journal what my purpose is. I journal the goals that are in line with that purpose. I do affirmations and I do gratitude every day. Those four categories: my purpose, goals that are in line with that, affirmations, and gratitude. And if you get a practice of doing that, I mean, it's just like you're waking up and doing 50 push-ups and sprinting a mile. I mean, it's building your mind to be so fit. So those are the things that I like to do. Historically, I've been into different things. I liked meditation for a while. That was one that was really important to me in my doctorate because I was just so overwhelmingly busy, and I would get really panicky throughout the day just from how every day was so different. I had a meeting with this person, I had to teach this student, I had to drive here to teach these students and do this and that, and then I was being a student, and just keep coordinating all of that was, ooh, I'm a high strung person anyway, and that was really challenging. And so during my doctorate, I was really into meditation. It was important for me to sit for 5 minutes, which is difficult. That is actually really
Yeah,
difficult
it's a long
to,
time.
meditate for even 5 minutes, but it's such a good exercise to train your mind to be able to kind of just chill, not shut down. It's about observing. um, I mean, go into that too later. There's lots of great exercises for meditation, but those are some of my favorite things: that morning routine and journaling for sure.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. My next question is, can you describe a time in your life when you were struggling with your mental health and how that affected your career as a student or wherever you were in your life at the time? And how did you get through this difficult time?
Sure. I it's funny, I kind of knew this question was coming. And it's funny because I really had to dig through like my memory to remember like all the tough times. And I think if I can, I just want to speak to that because I think it's really important for students to let go of the tough times and to always just hold on to the success, the success that you have as students and the good times. So I feel like I can tell you all the really great times in my career, all that, of course I had really tough times. There was, and I know in your first interview this came up as well, but whenever I came out of the closet 5 million years ago, that was a really challenging thing for me. And of course, that affected me as a student, as a musician. I just completely shut down when that happened. I just didn't know how to exist in the world. And I think that that happens for everybody at some point. You kind of find out who you are, and you're just wildly absorbed in your personal life. And I think the way to get through those times is to just be wildly absorbed in your personal life, is just to embrace, like, sometimes you just can't keep up with music theory and music history and writing your term paper and preparing for juries and figuring out who you are. Like, though you can't do them all at the same time. And so um, you see it all the time. Students just try to juggle the 5 million balls of being a music student and then dealing with being a young adult as well. Um, and so I'm really thankful for the people that I had in my life at that time who helped me get through that. But just being able to sit in that, and I wasn't really concerned with being a music major whenever my personal life was blowing up. I just took care of my personal life. It's important because whenever you get out into the real world, into the profession, no one ever really tells you this, but no one really cares if you can play or not. No one cares. They just care that you're a good person, that you come and you're authentic and you're yourself and you're comfortable to be around and you're comfortable operating in social situations. That's what people care about. And that's how you always get a call back for freelance work or for the job, or that's how you win the interview. No one really cares if you can play your instrument or not. At some level, everybody can play almost the same. So it's way more important to take care of your personal life. I remember though too, some examples of huge failures on stage. Um, I'm just totally falling on my face in solos and ensemble pieces and large ensemble. There was one at UT when I was in my master's that totally just wrecked me. I will never forget it. It was on the waterfront, Bernstein's On the Waterfront, and I just like on that solo. But I sat in that. After that concert, I was just a wreck. I was like, "Ah, this was awful. I'm awful. Everything's awful." And I really sat in that, and I didn't give any excuses. It was just like, I'm taking full responsibility for that. I got on stage, I did my best, and it like straight up wasn't good enough. And then I let it go. And I think that it's really important to do that, to own your mistakes, own your failures, say, "This is all me, all my fault. That was awful. That was so awful." And then you can let it go. But what I think some people do is give excuses for why they screw up, or they try to blame it on the circumstances. "Oh, my lips were really chapped that day, and that was so atypical," or, "Oh, I had like another recital that I was playing on that week, and my chops were just really sore." People say that stuff, then they don't take ownership, and then they never learn. Oh, take ownership of all that stuff. It's so super important. But I'll also say, it was challenging to think of times when I've failed on stage even. Um, and I just want to hammer that home. It's so important for students to just let it go, celebrate the good times, celebrate when you're doing really well, and remember what you're doing whenever that happens. And then all your failures, just learn from your mistakes, and then let them go.
Yeah, that's some great advice. Thank you. Okay, how do you perceive motivation? What sort of advice would you give to someone who is struggling with to stay motivated? I feel like I, as a student now and in my undergrad, have really struggled at times, and especially during this pandemic time in the beginning, to find motivation either to practice or to do my schoolwork or even just like go for a run or do those self-care things that are so important.
Mhm.
So, yeah, how do you perceive motivation and what sort of like advice do you have for that?
Yeah, I guess two main thoughts. First, if you look at any successful people, in music or not, just success in general, people did things without motivation. They didn't check in to see if they felt like doing it before they did the things that they knew that they should be doing. And I think that's really important to not. And there's lots of tips and tricks on like how to do that, that we can go into, but it's so important to not wait until you feel like doing it to do the thing that you need to do. Um, and we all know that feeling, because if you've ever had to prepare for a recital, all of a sudden 2 weeks before the recital, you can somehow figure out how to get into the practice room, whether you feel like it or not. You're like, "I have to do this." And so I think it's important to know that we can't always just wait around for motivation to hit us, or inspiration to hit us, whatever. You just kind of have to sit down, and do it. There's a really great book, and I forget the author, but it's called The War of Art. And he talks a lot about that. We feel this resistance, this lack of motivation to do the things that we know we need to do. That's your clue that you need to do that thing. That points you in the right direction. The things that you don't want to do, or you feel like you're like, "Oh, God, that doesn't sound like I can get into the practice room, or I can do this homework, or whatever, go on a jog," whatever it might be. Whenever you feel that resistance to that, that's your clue that that's the thing that you actually need to be doing. Um, the other thing is, motivation to me is like medicine. After everything that I just said, I still love to be motivated. I, of course, want to feel like doing the things that I want to be doing, that I need to be doing. But you take motivation like medicine. It's funny because sometimes we wait to feel motivated to get motivated. We're like, "Well, I don't feel like listening to a motivational talk," or "I don't feel like journaling affirmations," or we so we wait to get motivated, and that's a not a good trap to get into. I take it like medicine. That was another thing that I should have added earlier. I watch a motivation video every single morning, like, period. I take it like I'm taking my vitamins. I just do it. I don't wait to see if I feel like watching a motivational spiel. There's this really great YouTube channel. It's called the Mulligan Brothers. They have interview channel, like short clips channel, like longer clips channel. So there's different outlets for that. But it's just like you're exactly what you would imagine. It's like really dramatic music, boom, 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 and then like just these like really amazing speakers, just like spewing all this "you can do it" kind of stuff. But that really pumps me up, and you can kind of find what works for you. I've been all around with all the motivational speakers. So there's definitely a motivational speaker and a type of speaking that is for everybody, I think. Um, but that's so you just take it like medicine, and then you get motivated. And also action. Oh gosh, what? Hold on, let me get the phrase right. Uh, action precedes motivation or something. You have to you have to act your way into feeling and not feel your way into acting. That's it. You have to act your way into feeling and not feel your way into acting. So a lot of the times we're just waiting for the feeling to take action on something, and it works the other way around. As soon as you start doing the thing that you know that you need to be doing, oftentimes you're like, "Oh, I like this." I always feel like that anytime I work out. I'm like, "Oh, I don't wanna," but then I start working out. I'm like, "Yeah, this is awesome." It usually works. And with a practice session, if you can just force yourself to get into a practice room and start doing it, oftentimes you get into that flow, and the motivation hits after you start doing the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I've definitely experienced that multiple times in my life. Great, thank you. Um, how do you think one's environment affects their mental state or just their overall like day, you could say? And then what personal experiences do you have that reflect this?
Yeah, I mean, this is personal development 101, but you are a sum of the five people that you hang out with the most. And so if we're talking about your environment as far as like your friend group or who you're hanging out with, that's just something for you or for students to consider, is that you are a summation of your friend group. And so if you are, say you're in your undergrad and you're hanging out with the other undergrads that turn in their homework late and that like to skip class, and that they rather go out and eat pizza than sacrifice that time to go into the practice room, maybe rethink that. It's important who you surround yourself with. um, and the opposite, I love to be surrounded by people who are way smarter than me. You don't want to be the smartest person in your friend group. If you are, there's no room to grow.
Mhm.
I love putting there's this group in Austin. I did this thing, ATX Sprint Squad.
Yes.
I did ATX Sprint Squad, and it's just kind of like the movers and shakers of Austin, Texas, and none of them are musicians. There's a couple other musicians there, but it's not a music related thing. It's just people who are killing it in life, and being around them, I was just like, I want to be that. I aspire to be these people, and it's just regular people, just hanging out. You can become friends with. So I encourage people to do that. Go out and seek out people who are way better at you. Become friends with your professors. Take them out to coffee and pick their brain. Surround yourself with people who are going to, make your environment really positive. If you're talking about physical environment, I just recently had this whole. I was like, I'm not happy with my environment, and so I had just like sold all of the furniture in my apartment and just redid everything just so that I would be in a space that I felt good in. Sometimes we just feel stagnant. Sometimes you need to just move apartments, move states, move cities. And as people get older and older, you realize that people just do this. Once you have your degrees and you're, settled in your education, but not settled into your career, you can just pick up and move and go start fresh in a new city or whatever. That's really important to make sure that you're feeling like your environment isn't bringing you down. Sometimes you don't realize it. If you're just thinking about like your apartment, or for undergrads, or if you're just thinking about your dorm room, that's just the spot that you like come home to every day and then you sleep in. But people don't really ever address, like, is this place making me feel like I want to be productive? Are there things like around my apartment that inspire me, to get up? Or is it really conducive to just be, in and laying in bed and being lazy? So I think it's important to kind of check in with that. Also, just like a moment to moment thing. When like people should pay attention to where they practice. Do you have a window to look out of? It makes you feel so much better about your practice session if you can look out of I know it's really simple, but just being able to look out of a window when you practice, or just feel comfortable. If at the school that people are practicing at um, just has these bland white walls, maybe bring you like a little something something to put on your stand to like make you feel good and make you feel inspired, because your environment affects you always like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm experiencing that a little bit right now, because I just moved home to New York for a few weeks, and I'm still in school right now, and it's been challenging a little
Yeah,
bit being in, like, my childhood bedroom, and I'm like, "Ah."
yeah, the environments just don't match up.
Yeah. But
there's
we're making
another
it.
there's another really cool trick. Anytime that you go through a door, anytime that you open a door and you go into a new room, you say, bring in the joy. Just in your head, you say, bring in the joy. So you open up the door, you walk into the room, bring in the joy. And that's not you bring in the joy, that you're telling the room to bring in the joy to you. Like, there's joy available in each room. I love that's just it's kind of random, but I love that trick, because sometimes if you're at your childhood home, you're stuck in this uh that kind of mindset, that environment. And so you have that available to you. You can open the room, like, bring in joy, bring in like scholarship, bring in this academic in me, and that can be like your new space in that way. It's a cool trick to do that.
Yeah, I'll definitely try that out. Thank you. Okay, now to get a little bit into the current times with this pandemic. So how has the pandemic affected your career? I know when it first hit, you were finishing up your doctorate, but now you're kind of moving into that next phase of your life. What are some of like the silver linings that you have discovered with yourself through this time?
Yeah, I I've been asked this a couple of times now, and at first I felt really guilty, and I've just decided to shuck the guilt. I'm not going to feel guilty for saying this. I've straight up just been thriving, 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 thriving. Whenever the shutdown happened, I was at the end of my doctorate, and I made it happen for me and not to me. Meaning, like, I took that as I have a lot of free time. I can now like finish this degree more leisurely, which felt really great. Um, I could not do my final recital, but instead I made a documentary about my research, and that I chose, like, this is like something that is good. Like, I can now do this because of this pandemic, and so that was a big mental shift that I think is important for everyone to kind of go under, is make sure that life is happening for you and not to you. And I've kind of had that perspective this whole time, and so the whole time I'm thinking, like, what opportunities do I have, excuse me, what opportunities do I have now that I wouldn't have had if this pandemic hadn't hit.
Mhm.
All of a sudden I was able to teach, because I teach about 30 now, about 40, 45 students, middle school and high school students. During the shutdown, that all went virtual. And because of that, going into the summer months, they were all cool just having virtual lessons. And so all of a sudden, I was teaching my entire studio virtually over the whole summer, which has never happened. I've never been able to teach my students consistently throughout the summer, just because coordinating like home visits or like where lessons can happen has always been difficult. Um, and so that's more than a silver lining. It was great. It was
Yeah.
really, really good things happening. But I also realized that I had some systems in place that kind of kept running after the whole world caught on fire, so to speak, because everything was different all of a sudden. But I kind of identified retrospectively all of these, yeah, these systems, this morning routine, a routine in fitness, a practice routine, all a mental health, a mental fitness routine, all of these different things. And so even though everything was so different, I was still functioning the same. And because I do practice mental fitness, I was kind of thriving during all of it. And it's offered me a lot of of different opportunities. I do know that a lot of people, including a lot of my colleagues, were not doing so hot. I know that motivation has been really low for people, and people are out of money, and concert seasons are canceled. And I know that's a really tough thing, but I would encourage anybody listening to this to reframe it and try to figure out how this pandemic is happening for you and not happening to you. And maybe even just 5 years, we might be recovered from this. Probably not. Probably like 15 years after this, we'll all just look back on this time. And God, I just don't want to be one of those people that were just poopy smoopy about it. Like I don't want to think of this time as wasted time. And like I'm just kind of like watching the clock to see if my career is going to take off one day or not. Like it's way more fun to figure out the new puzzle that you have to configure to make your life work. There's a great book by Ryan Holiday. He has a couple of really great books. He maybe this is In Stillness is the Key. I forget which one this is. But he talks about, or maybe the book is called this, The Obstacle is the Way. And it just talks about, whatever falls in your way, instead of thinking of that thing as this thing that you have to dodge, or it screwed up your plan, that just becomes your new plan. That just becomes the new way that you have to go about going about. And so I think that's important, an important perception for people to have, is this pandemic is just now part of the process of doing whatever you intended to do in the first place.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. I have one more question, but before we wrap up, can you just tell us a little bit about your recent, like you bought a new camera and like your recent realization of what you're
Yeah,
going to do, and then also talk a little bit about your YouTube channel, which
sure.
I'm going to drop the link below for everyone.
Sure. Awesome. Yeah, thanks for the shout out. um so yeah, I wrapping up my doctorate, I think the thing that people expect you to do is to like immediately go into academia, and that sounds kind of awful to me. And so I've brainstormed, what is it that I want to do right now, and I'm really passionate about mental health, mental fitness for musicians, physical wellness. And so what I plan to do is I want to do a lecture recital tour as soon as this pandemic is over. So this might happen as early as next fall, 2021, or it may have to wait depending on how COVID is, because I'd like it to be in person. Um, but I want to go university to university, college to college, and vlog my experience of doing recitals and lectures for different universities. And so talk about mental health related things, give a master class, teach the students there, give a little mini recital, talk about innovation in music, because I can't pay for a pianist. And so I'll just be by myself playing solo works. And so I'll talk about how to do that in a compelling way. Vlog in between all the stuff, kind of vlog my own experience, and then wrap it up in like a 30-minute episode to put on YouTube. And I think people will really like it. I think it'll be a really inspiring thing to watch, an interesting thing to watch. Hopefully, we'll see how interesting it will get. Um, but that's kind of what I'm doing right now. I also do, just kind of randomly at the moment, some motivational videos on YouTube. People are able to check that out just under my name, Rusty Holmes. Also, you can keep track with all of my French horn endeavors at Rusty Holmes Horn on Instagram and Facebook as well. It's just Rusty Holmes. So all those things are available. Also, if anybody out in the web, the online universe, is interested in any lessons or checking out any of my online content, you can also go to rustyholmes.com and they can check out information there too.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, so for the last question, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. I feel like I'm still just there. I'm still young. Every, I don't know. I journal about this a lot. Anytime that I'm doing really well in life, there's always humor. I always find that there's humor anytime that I'm doing well. And I wish I could go back to some of the situations that I got myself into as a little kiddo, as an undergrad. Um, and just say, laugh it off. Like, stop taking life so seriously. You're gonna die one day. Like, you're just like walking around on this earth like everybody else. Chill out. You know, sometimes we take ourselves so seriously. And we get so bent out of shape about the smallest things. And that's still a constant reminder. I feel like I'm reminding myself of this now. You just got to laugh it off. You have to find the humor in things. And don't let people get under your skin. Don't let situations get under your skin. Um, and it's funny. I'll just tell this last story. I was talking to my professor, my previous professor, Patrick Hughes. We were talking about how sometimes we just forget how to play the French horn. We just totally forget. We'll put it to our face and be like, "What? Like, how do you do this?" And we'll just sound awful. You just have awful playing days. And at this point in my career, I'm like, oh well, like I guess I'm not gonna practice that much today. This sucks. And it's important to laugh it off. I remember if that were to happen like 10 years ago, I would just be totally flustered. Like, what's wrong? Like, do I have focal dystonia? Do I have like what's going on? And you can get really in your head really quick. And now it's like, oh, I guess we're not gonna do that today. So yeah, I think that's the biggest piece of advice I would give my younger self is just to laugh it off. Find the humor.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you so much for joining me today, Dr. Holmes. And don't forget to subscribe to his channel. I'll drop that link below. So subscribe to my channel. And thank you so much for watching.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.